Hello and welcome to Garden of Luma, where I provide you with tips for growing edibles in hot climates. Hello everybody, Joe here with Garden of Luma. If you guys are new to this channel, please subscribe to stay updated on the latest videos. I recently just got back from vacation. I was in San Diego for the week, had an amazing time. If you guys are anything like me, when you guys go to a new place or go on vacation now, if you're an avid gardener, you're probably looking at other people's yards, checking out plants when you're at SeaWorld or wherever you go. You know, that's me. I'm always just kind of scanning everything, looking at people's fruit trees and plants and just spotting different cool things. You know, I was walking in a neighborhood with my kids and found some banana trees and showed the kids, hey, look at the rack of bananas on the tree, and everybody got all excited. So, you know, we as gardeners just, you know, are really passionate about plants and love checking gardens out. So, getting to today's video, today I wanted to talk about shade for your garden, when you need it, when you should start shading, if you need it at all. And so in the Phoenix, Arizona area, where we have extreme dry heat and the sun here gets to be really intense, oftentimes you need to add some shade. So especially when you're planting new fruit trees, when they're really small and young, is when you're gonna wanna shade these types of trees. That first year to get them started, get them established, get the roots going, is when you're going to want to shade those trees. There are some fruit trees that can handle our full sun right from the start. You know, things like jujubes, pomegranates, mulberries, you know, some of those types of trees, you don't even really have to worry about shade protecting them. But it can always help to get the tree established that first year to do that. So I typically pay attention a lot to the weather as an indicator of when to start putting shade up. As our temps start to creep up into the mid-90s Fahrenheit and above, that is usually when I start putting the shade up. And so here in Arizona, that's usually around like mid-May. And so, you know, again, I pay attention to the weather, how high the temps are starting to get. And then I typically take them down in mid-October. You want to make sure your structure is really sound and sturdy. We have monsoons here, which have really high wind gusts. I've seen a lot of shade structures that look good, but once those winds hit, it just takes them right away. So make sure your structures are really sturdy. So I'm going to take you out in the yard here, talk a little bit about how I shade trees in gardens, as well as some signs to look for when you need to pull out the shade cloth. And so this year, as we're talking about shade, most of my trees have been in the ground for several years now, at least 2 to 3 years. And I've tried this year to go completely shadeless. And I'm seeing some positive things this year. So let's go check it out here. Okay, so here's an example of how I would shade my trees. So as you can see around my sapodilla, I have these 4 wooden stakes here. So all you'd want to do is just put 4 stakes up like this around your tree. And then I have the shade fabric here. So as you can see, the shade fabric has holes in it. So it doesn't completely shade out your tree. When you buy shade fabric, it's going to come in different percentages. So you still want some sunlight to get to your trees. You know, I see some people that just throw up maybe like a tarp or something that just completely fully shades out their plant, thinking they need to get shade on it. Well, you still want some light in there, you know, that is necessary for plants to have some sunlight. So you can get these up to like 90%, so that's pretty much full shade. And for my loquat here, which is really sun sensitive, especially the first year, I did an 80% shade. So things like a loquat here, an avocado, you know, you'd want that really heavy shade. You know, everything else that you're shading, like maybe a mango tree, for example, I would only do like 30 to 50% shade. But as you can see, here's my loquat. I did not shade this at all. We're going into late July. I mean, we've had temps up to 115, consistently over 100 degrees. And this was the tree I was most worried about this year, leaving it shadeless because it's going into its second full summer here. But it's done really well, so I'm not gonna shade this unless I absolutely need to. I've been checking it out frequently. I don't see any signs of damage on the leaves, so I'm gonna just let this go. And like I said, this year I have done nothing to shade anything, and so I'll usually just staple the shade cloth to these stakes here, or as you can see, I have those large paper clips that I use to clamp things down. And one other thing to consider with your shade is you want airflow in here as well. So you don't want to just completely box this in. You'll want to leave some off the ground to let some airflow in here, or like this back side doesn't get as much sun coming from that direction, so I would leave that side completely open. Sometimes it can be hard to distinguish when trees are getting damaged by the sun versus it's maybe a mineral deficiency or other issues going on. So as you can see here, here's an example on a citrus of some sun scorch. So you'll see where it kind of bleaches out in the middle of the leaves and things, and then eventually as it gets further damaged, it'll start really like burning the leaves, as you can see in the middle there. So that's a good example of what sun damage, sun scorch is going to look like on your trees. So if you're starting to see a lot of this and you really want to protect your tree, these are the signs that you're looking for. You know, when you see that, get your shade up. I'm not too worried about that because I just see that on a few little leaves, and that is pretty common for citrus here, and it's pushing through that. Right here is a mango leaf. Looks really similar. As you can see how it's bleaching the leaf out here, that lighter color in the middle, and then you're having these burn spots and everything on the leaves. That is sun damage there. And so those are the signs that you're going to look for. If you're seeing more of the burns on the tips, a lot of times that's going to indicate salt damage. Here is a leaf that got really scorched here from the sun. And what happened was I ended up tying this branch up here, so I moved the position of this branch, and that led to the sun damage here. So that's something else to think about, like especially if you have plants in containers or you're putting shade fabric up or taking it off. So a lot of times when you remove that shade fabric, you'll start to see burn, because that change in the sun exposure, the plant has to acclimate and adjust. Think about when you're hardening off your plants, you know, you don't instantly throw them out in the sun. You know, it takes some time to acclimate. It's the same thing here when you are, you know, putting shade cloth up and taking it down. Even though you may think, well, the temps are cooler now and they can handle it, that isn't always the case. It has to kind of acclimate. Okay, here's another thing. I'm really surprised about this year. My tomato plants have not been shaded at all. Usually I don't shade my tomato plants. I know a lot of people do, but usually they fry up in the sun and the heat. So I end up just letting them go and pulling them. But it's late July here. This is probably the latest I've ever had tomatoes going, because usually, like I said, I just let them go and pull them. But they're doing quite well, so I've kept them going here. And as you can see around it, I have a microclimate, so I have other trees and things. That's a big reason why I can get away with not using shade. So if this was just out in the middle of the yard here with nothing around it, getting full sun all day, then yes, this would be a problem. But if your yards have other trees around, you know, you get that afternoon shade and different things going on, then you don't have to worry so much about shade cloth. So that's another nice thing about, you know, high density planting and having a lot of things going on in the yard. All right, so hopefully those tips were helpful for you guys to know when to put up shade, if you need shade, and things like that. Check me out at gardenofluma.com for more tips on gardening and growing fruit trees, especially in hot, dry climates. Thanks for watching.